Jeff Caves here on the Kingdom of Pod on the Believe Podcast Network in Flower Mound, Texas. Hey, I want to talk more about the transfer portal. Here we are on the eve of the early National Letter of Intent Day on the 21st of December. As I record this, today is December 20th. And there's been a lot of comings and goings. It was starting on the 5th of December. I'm reminded that the transfer portal was open and kids were able to declare officially that they wanted to transfer. Now, they don't have to sign by a particular date. In this case, the transfer portal is open for 45 days until the 19th of January of next year. So they have until then to declare that they want to transfer and then ultimately sign a letter of intent, walk on, whatever their next move is going to be from there down the road. Some you're seeing already. Boise State hauling in some transfers. A wide receiver just transferred in from Colorado. They've got a defensive back. I think it was Wisconsin coming in. So these things are taking place. And here's, the one thing I have thought about, and others, this is not new information. And when I talked to Andy Avalos at the Frisco Bowl, I mentioned this to him. I can't imagine what it's like managing a football staff and a team during the football season and looking for an offensive coordinator at the same time, managing kids who want to transfer, managing kids who have transferred, and then thinking about who the next person you're going to bring in is, handling all the recruiting, replacing other coaches who are going to leave or other coaches who you have to talk into staying or vice versa. And in some isolated incidents, of course, you've got coaches themselves who move on. And then you had a bowl game on top of all that. And for some of the coaches right now, there's 4 at least dealing with the college football playoff or the New Year's Day 6 bowl game, folks. That's quite a bit of work. And as we get to an expanded college football playoff, there'll be all kinds of collisions of time. You would think there's a better way to do all this. It has certainly contributed to the expansion of football staffs. You have entire groups of people that are in charge of roster management so that they are always anticipating getting to that full 85 scholarship number and knowing who's leaving, who's coming, and what your numbers look like. And then what your numbers look like by the class, what your numbers look like by the position. And these are very important details that a coach is briefed on by people in the football department who keep track of this actively. So that gives you an idea of the importance of all of it, that of course there's people dedicated to doing it. The coach isn't doing it every day by himself. He's got literally tens of things to do each day, and that's just one of them. But it seems to me, if you looked more at the models of pro sports, and the NFL would be the best model to pay attention to, why don't you go through the transfer portal? Why don't you get coaches solidified in their new jobs by a certain date, which typically is going to have something to do with recruiting? Get your transfer portal done where whoever's going to leave from one place to another is solidified, and then get to your National Letter of Intent days and go back to a February or March model so that when they're out talking to the 4-year and 2-year transfers from high schools and junior colleges, for example, these are staffs in place that are going to be there. They're recruiting during a time where they don't have a bowl game or a playoff game to work on, and they're not looking for their next gig. They're at their job. The bigger schools wanted to back that National Letter of Intent Day up to December, but this was before the transfer portal took effect. So I would not be surprised if there's some swing put into that. I'll get to the Boise State roster situation in a second, but I just want to mention this. When it comes to the transfer portal, we're seeing it take place in waves. Now, there was a rush of names that went into the portal on the 5th of December. There was some, like Hank Bachmeier, who announced his intention to transfer before the portal opened. That's different. They could have technically still talked him out of it, but I think, as I understand it, Hank moved back to California and he was done and gone, which was a very unfortunate, odd situation. So right now, you've had all the kids go into the portal from Boise State, we think at least, around that December 5th time period. Here's my words of caution for Boise State fans or fans of any other school. I know that in not only the case of Boise State, but many schools that are on a similar academic calendar, these kids are going home for Christmas, which is Sunday, right? In the case of Boise State, I looked it up. The spring semester starts the 9th of January. You know, if you're at their age, once you pack your bags and you go home for Christmas and you're contemplating transferring, you want to talk to your parents, your coaches, you want to talk to anybody else in your life that can help you find that new school. You want to pack up all your stuff, take it with you. Frankly, since you're younger, you may not want to have a face-to-face meeting with the coaches to tell them you're leaving. You may feel more comfortable doing it by text or phone or whatever other means you email that you may find. So I think there's another wave across the country of transfers that could very well come up, and that would be after Christmas. And after the National Letter of Intent Day tomorrow, some of the schools that missed out on what they still need at a high level may be in the market for players because they didn't get what they needed tomorrow on the 21st. And they would be open to looking at what's in the transfer portal. And some kids may jump in there to add their names to the list. You know, just looking at Boise State and what their needs are. I mean, the defensive line has had some attrition, offensive line, and then there's whoever decides to graduate or not, you know, and not just graduate. I mean, leave, not take their 6th year of eligibility like a Riley Smith or whatever. And you don't know until they ultimately figure it out themselves. So that leaves Boise State in a more difficult position. But I think it's really become more the norm for kids to get their bachelor's degree and then have another year of eligibility and go somewhere else just for the experience and do it and get your master's from somewhere else. And I think it's great. I mean, if you take the one free transfer with no penalty because it was a bad fit or the coach that recruited you left, and you go from, say, Weber State to Boise State, or however you want to look at that, and you don't get penalized, or if you go from Arizona to Boise State, you don't get penalized, you're eligible immediately. And then you stay at this new school and you play some, you don't play enough, you maybe regret not changing positions. If you were a defensive back, maybe you should have played running back, whatever the case may be. It's usually more the other way around. And you decide, you know what? I've got my bachelor's degree. Why don't I go transfer? I still got a redshirt year and another year of eligibility. And I enroll. And once you have your bachelor's degree, you can transfer again and not get a penalty. So the positive thing to me is these kids are getting a great education. They're getting degrees, and some of them are getting master's degrees at an increasingly higher rate than I think previous to the graduate transfer rule coming into effect. So there's a good thing in society's case, but my only word of caution is don't rest thinking the transfer portal's closed, because to me, the post-Christmas pre-enrollment for spring semester, that's the hard date. Who's going to be here on January 9th? That's the big date to keep in mind for Boise State and many other schools. Now, the portal, the place where kids can declare their intentions to transfer, is a 45-day window that goes into January, as I mentioned earlier, January 19th. It will close and reopen again sometime in May, but only for 2 weeks. So that's the calendar, if you will. You've got National Letter of Intent Day tomorrow, portal closing in January, the late National Letter of Intent Day in February, which only about 15% of the players will be announced then, and then the closing of the transfer portal, but the reopening of it in May. So a lot of moving parts here, but January 9th, that's a big one because kids need to be in school for what they need to get accomplished at schools like a Boise State that are on a semester schedule that started then. There's an early thought on the transfer portal. I have more to say about the rest of it. I hope everybody enjoys their holiday, their family, their COVID-free holiday, and get back to that. I know I'm going to be doing some traveling. My wife and I going to see more family up north of here, so I don't know exactly when I'll be able to record the next Kingdom of Pod, but I've enjoyed this part of it. Hope you enjoy your holiday, and I'll talk to you next time soon.